Hi everybody, and welcome to another JavaScript tutorials video about DOM. So in this part we're going to cover querySelector and querySelectorAll and see the differences it has with the element by ID or element by class name or element by tag name. So let's create a new file. I'm going to open a new terminal, and then here I'm going to run touch query.html. You can name it whatever you would like. And then I'm going to open up the file. So let's open a file, and so let's find query.html. So I'm going to copy and paste all of the contents of the index.html that we have on the previous videos, and here I'm going to delete all we have inside of the scripts tag, and let's keep what we have inside of the HTML. So here we have some tags like the form tag, the h2 tag, and let us also add some other tags like the p tag. So the p tag with the class name my class, and here let's write something, okay, and then another p tag with the same class name. So let me copy and paste this and something else. So let's save this too, and now also let's add another p tag, this time with the ID, with the specific ID. So ID equals my ID. My ID. And now just let's close that and write last line. So the purpose of doing this is to play around with the querySelector and see how querySelector is going to be an alternative for get element. So as you can remember, we had get element by ID or get element by class name or get element by tag name, and all of these different kinds of get element by. So here we're going to see how querySelector or querySelectorAll we're going to be a very good alternative for all of this and be able to cover all of them all together, whether we want to choose a class or an ID or a tag or a list of tags. Whatever we want to do, we can use that. So here let me define var my tag, and then here I'm going to say that my tag equals to document. So it starts again with documents, but here instead of get element we have querySelectorAll, and so querySelector first before we get to the querySelectorAll. And if I choose the h2 tag, here we have one h2, so it's not a good example, but let's try that. But it's going to choose the first tag with that specific name. So if it's a h2 tag, it will choose the very first h2 tag and it will return it for us. So instead of adding this, okay, anyway, let's go to the next line and console.log that. So I can write console.log and here I can write my tag. So let's save this, and you'll see that instead of the inspect elements console, you should be able to see the results. So let's see why isn't it showing that. So probably because we haven't run this with the live server. So let's start it, and so I think let me try again. Okay, there we go. So we have added all of these p tags, and then instead of the console we have the h2 tag, right? So it contains the h2 tag, and so we can also add inner HTML to see what it has instead of the HTML. And so let's save this, and as you can see it says login form, so the h2 tag shows login form, so it's correct. So now let's change this with the p tag, and let's see what it shows there. So let's save this, and as you can see, it says something. So it has chosen the first p tag, so it hasn't gone after the others. So if I choose selector all and save this, as you will be able to see that it says undefined because we have a list of them. So here we should choose which one of the items of the list we need. So if I choose the first item, you will see that it says something. If I choose the item with the index 2, it will show the third one, the last line. And if I choose the index 1 and save this, you will be able to see that it shows something else, which is the second line. So and if I completely remove this and save this, you will be able to see that there's this node list that we're going to see. And if you move your mouse over each one of them, you will be able to see that the line will be highlighted. So we're going to talk about the nodes in the next videos, in the next tutorials. But here nodes means each one of the elements that we're mentioning. So right now, imagine that we want to get one of the p tags of the specific class. So in order to do that, we have two options. First of them is to write p dot. My ID is just the same as the selectors in the CSS, right? So actually my class. So let's save this, and as you can see, it only shows this one. And if here I say dot inner HTML, you will be able to see that, okay, it says because we have two of the p tags with my class, we have to choose one of the indexes here. So let's save this, and as you can see, it says something. If I choose 1 and save this, it says something else. If I choose 2, it's going to be an error because we don't have 3 p tags with the same class, with the my class, right? So here let us also choose another way. So imagine that instead of that we write my class. Let's see what happens there. So still an error. Let me write 0. So you cannot write it this way. You can only mention the tag and the class related to that. But imagine that we want to do it for an ID. So we do not write, for example, p.myid. Instead, you can write hashtag myid. And so let's save this, and as you can see, it shows the last line, right? You don't need to even choose the index 1. No, yes, you need to do that because it is a list of all of the IDs with my ID, right? So we have I think we probably have my IDs somewhere else, but no, I don't think so. So it's the last line it's going to present. So let me save this. It seems that we don't have any my IDs anyway. So that is the way we can work with the querySelectorAll. So if I choose querySelector, you will not need to choose anything, right? Because we do not have a list, because it's just a querySelector and it's going to choose the first one. So for example, about the class, let's try that, but I don't think that we're going to get anything out of it. So let's try this, and as you can see, it's an error. So you need to mention also the tag related to that class. It's just like the querySelector instead of the CSS. So imagine that we have another tag right over here. So this is another h tag. So for example, h3 tag, and then we want to place this instead of a div tag, right? So here I'm going to say what we're going to do. So we've got the div tag, and then instead of it we have h3 tag, and I'm going to here write another section. So imagine that we want to change the another section of this one. So what I need to do, first of all, let me run the live server, and then we have another section right over here. Now what I'm going to do here is to call this, be able to query this h3 tag. So imagine that we have a class name for this as well. So class, and I can call this h3 class, for example, h3 class, and with double S. So right now let's get this and see it in the console. So what I'm gonna do is to get my head tag, and so we can console.log straight away. So console.log, and then here I can write document dot querySelector, and then I can write h3. So first of all, we have the div tag, right? So it's better to write div and then h3 and then dot the name of the class. So we have let's check what is it. So h3 dot h3 class. So the way we write it is this way: we have a div tag, and then we have a space. So, and then we write the name of the tag, which is inside of the div tag, and then the name of the class if there is any class. So what I'm going to do is to save this, and then here inspect the element and see what it returns. As you can see, it returns the h3 class. So it has done this in a correct way. So here let's write inner HTML and save this, and as you can see, it shows now it should show another section. As you can see, it shows another section. Something here is related to this part. So if you use querySelectorAll, it will return a list. So instead, from that list, you'll need to also determine the index. So I determined the index 0 because we only have one element, and save this. As you can see, it shows what we have inside of it. So another section again. If I omit this part because we have querySelectorAll, if I save this, you will see that that it's undefined because it's just a list. So we need to determine the index. And if I show index 1 because we have no index, it will throw an error. So let's take it back to where it was. So that's it for this part of the tutorial about querySelectorAll, and we have managed to see how it is different from the document that gets element by ID or gets element by class name or tag name or whatever property it is. But using the querySelector, you can choose absolutely anything, but it has its own specific kind of writing. So if you're calling a class, you should write the name of the tag, then dot name of the class. If you have a div tag, you need to write div and then a space and then the name of the tag and then the class. And if you have an ID, you should write hashtag, the name of the ID. So that's it for this part of the tutorial.